Nelson's Navy, Fact and Fiction, Part 2, 1793 to 1802. From the beginning of the French Revolutionary War until the Peace of Amiens. The first major naval event of the war took place at Toulon, which was handed over to the British and their allies by French royalists. Lord Hood and the Mediterranean fleet took possession until they were driven off by French artillery on the heights above. The French guns were commanded by a young officer named Napoleon Bonaparte. Nelson was active in command of HMS Agamemnon 64, mainly carrying dispatches. In form line of battle, Richard Blytho, in command of HMS Hyperion 74, is present at a similar event nearby or next door. In 1794, revolutionary France was in danger of starvation. Both the French and British fleets sailed in response, the French to protect a vital grain convoy from America, the British to intercept them. The result was the first major fleet action of the war, called the Glorious 1st of June by the British. Admiral Lord Howe wanted his ships to break through the French line individually to prevent the French from turning away, but to protect the convoy the French stayed and fought. De Loutherbourg's painting is not strictly accurate, as Lord Howe's flagship, HMS Queen Charlotte, was not able to get broadside on to the French flagship Montagne. Although the British took 6 ships and sank a 7th, the French mission succeeded as the huge convoy arrived safely. But in Mr. Midshipman Hornblower, the cargo of rice, the fleets meet off stage. HMS Indefatigable, with Hornblower aboard, intercepts the convoy and takes ship after ship. The marine artist Nicholas Pocock observed the battle from aboard the frigate HMS Pegasus. His paintings of the battle give an indication of the amount of smoke from the guns, but they also suggest that Howe's captains acted aggressively whether or not they understood Lord Howe's manoeuvre, as it was later called. British ships of the line are shown coming between 2 opponents or being raked and dismasted. Mr. Midshipman Hornblower, the Frogs and the Lobsters is based on the unsuccessful Quiberon Bay expedition of 1795. As an example of backstory, in January 1797, the French 74 Droit de l'Homme was returning from an attempted invasion of Ireland when she was sighted by the frigates Indefatigable and Amazon. Although frigates were not expected to engage ships of the line, they took advantage of their greater manoeuvrability to rake Droit de l'Homme, which was already storm damaged, nor could it open its lower gun ports in the heavy sea. They continued their attacks all night, until, at first light, Indefatigable sighted breakers under their lee. Indefatigable escaped, but Droit de l'Homme and Amazon were both driven on shore and wrecked. In A Ship of the Line, Hornblower remembers that wild night as he passes Audierne Bay where it happened. Jack Aubrey's First Lieutenant Harding also remembers it in The Yellow Admiral. Not only is Nelson himself one of the models for our fictional heroes, he is also their hero. Jack Aubrey cherishes the memory of the 2 things Nelson said to him. His exploits are often compared with Nelson's. One of his officers congratulates him, "You have come at the Nelson's Bridge at last," in the Ionian mission. In an earlier timeline, Ramage is given his first command by Commodore Nelson. In 1797, Nelson was involved in 2 incidents which call into question what was fact and what was fiction. In Mr. Midshipman Hornblower, the Duchess and the Devil, Acting Lieutenant Horatio Hornblower sails into the Spanish fleet in fog, but this actually happened to Horatio Nelson himself. He was on detached duty, sailing the frigate HMS Minerve, when he sailed into the Spanish fleet in fog. Unlike Hornblower, Commodore Nelson escaped undetected. He returned to Gibraltar and his flagship HMS Captain 74. At the Battle of Cape St. Vincent, the Mediterranean fleet, under Admiral Sir John Jervis, was steering to intercept a Spanish fleet. It was escorting a convoy carrying a valuable cargo of quicksilver. There was also a danger that the Spanish could join up with the French at Brest. The Spanish fleet was sailing in two groups. Sir John Jervis formed line and headed for the gap between the two Spanish groups. This was a tactic which had worked against a badly formed enemy several times before, but Jervis's order to tack in succession made it look as though the Spanish were going to get away. In Command of the Ocean, historian N.A.M. Roger states that the Spanish Admiral de Cordova ordered his van to turn and attack the British rear. He also ordered his leeward group to attack the British near the point where their line was tacking, led round by Captain Trowbridge in the Culloden. The Spanish leeward group attacked the British line, but was beaten off. This is when the question arises, was Nelson's account fiction? He sent home his own account in the hope that it would be published. He claimed that he left his position towards the rear of the line on his own initiative, but did he? Naval historian N.A.M. Roger says that Nelson was actually following orders. Admiral Jervis had signalled the British rear under Vice Admiral Sir Charles Thompson to block the move by the Spanish van. Roger thinks that Thompson didn't see the signal, but Nelson did. He wore out of the British line in HMS Captain, followed by Collingwood in the Excellent. They were soon joined by other British ships led by Culloden. Due to the teamwork of the British, they took 4 Spanish ships, including 2 which had collided and been battered by the 4 British ships. The San Nicolas was trying to avoid Excellent's fire when it collided with the San Joseph. Pocock's painting shows the damaged captain grappling San Nicolas before Nelson personally led the boarding party. Both San Nicolas and San Joseph struck their colours. In Collingwood's words, the resistance they made was not great, a sort of scuffle in which a few lives were lost. However, the achievement became famous as Nelson's patent bridge for boarding first rates. In fiction, the Battle of Cape St. Vincent happens very much on stage. It features in Ramage and the Drumbeat and J. Worrell's Sails on the Horizon. Like Nelson, our heroes are good, if not exemplary officers, but unlike Nelson, their seamanship is very good. Not only was Nelson prone to seasickness, like Hornblower, but N.A.M. Roger considered that Nelson's seamanship was not good because he allowed his flagship, HMS Vanguard, to be dismasted. This happened on the 21st of May, 1798, just as the French sailed from Toulon on their way to Egypt. Nelson became truly famous after the Battle of the Nile in 1798. His attack was both timely and bold, but its success was also due to the initiative of his captains. This was something he encouraged, referring to them as his band of brothers. His leading ships were in line ahead to negotiate the shoals at the entrance to the bay at the mouth of the Nile. They noticed that the water was deep enough to sail down the unprepared landward side of the anchored French line. In Jack Aubrey's fictional backstory, he is there aboard HMS Leander 50 with the rest of the fleet as it arrived from the seaward side. The leading British ships were able to double on the anchored French ships as they fought their way down the line. The French flagship L'Orient caught fire and blew up about 10 p.m. Nelson himself received a minor wound but returned on deck. It was an astonishing victory. Only 2 French ships of the line got away the following day. After almost continuous fighting, no British ship was capable of preventing their escape. A few days later, one of them, the Genereux, captured HMS Leander with Jack Aubrey still aboard. In Master and Commander, as they are about to be taken by Linois' squadron, he warned Stephen Maturin that he was stripped or robbed of all he had. In flying colours, Hornblower's defence of the Sutherland is compared with Captain Thompson's of the Leander. As previously mentioned, the Battle of the Nile featured in R.M. Ballantyne's 1869 novel The Battle on the Breeze, but more recently in Alexander Kent's Signal Close Action, David Donaghy's Tested by Fate, J. Worrell's Any Approaching Enemy, and Julian Stockwind's Tenacious. Nelson received numerous honours after the battle. These included the Chelenque or diamond spray he wore on his hat in a well-known portrait. Jack Aubrey was also awarded a Chelenque for defeating the rebellious Mustafa Bey in the Ionian mission. Both had clockwork motors to make them rotate. The Aubrey-Maturin series begins in 1800. In a note included in The Far Side of the World, O'Brien regretted not starting earlier, because had the writer known how much pleasure he was to take in this kind of writing, and how many books were to follow the first, he would certainly have started the sequence much earlier. Thomas Cochrane was the model for several episodes of Jack Aubrey's career. O'Brien freely admitted that Master and Commander, the first in the series, was based upon Lord Cochrane's early days in command of the Speedy. Earlier, Cochrane had been in command of the prize crew, which has brought the captured Genereux, and possibly Aubrey, to Port Mahon. Aubrey's appointment to HM sloop Sophie bears an obvious relationship to Cochrane's appointment to HM sloop Speedy, as well as their numerous captures. The Sophie's battle with the fictional Xebec frigate Cacafuego is based on Speedy's battle with the real Xebec frigate El Gamo. They both witnessed the Battle of Algeciras as captives and endure court-martial for the loss of their sloops. In Touch and Go, Richard Delancey serves with the fleet during the second part of that battle. However, Stephen Maturin is a superb piece of invention by his author. He is the vehicle for medical, musical, and both natural and political history. All of these are based on fact, such as the references to Sir Joseph Banks. A medical example is trepanning, which is the oldest surgical operation for which there is archaeological evidence. Stephen Maturin performs it twice, but almost has it done to him in The Far Side of the World. The Battle of Copenhagen was the occasion of another famous Nelson incident, the Blind Eye. Colonel William Stewart was aboard Nelson's flagship, HMS Elephant 74. According to him, Nelson acknowledged his superior's signal of recall. He said to the captain of his flagship, "You know, Foley, I have only one eye. I have a right to be blind sometime. I really do not see the signal." In Lieutenant Hornblower, Post-Captain, and Ramage's Devil, we learn of the peace or treaty of Amiens. But peace brings mixed fortunes to our heroes. It brought the French Revolutionary War, or War of the First and Second Coalitions, to an end. Several more coalitions or alliances would be necessary to bring a lasting peace. So the story will continue. In Part 3 we will cover the period 1803 to 1805, including Trafalgar. Part 4 will cover the rest of the Napoleonic War and its aftermath. Thank you for watching.